today we're gonna look at ADA, VET, and Link. Ended off with ETH and USD. And Bitcoin as well, of course. So first off, ADA had an absolute crazy tear. If you look at its history, there were so many people who, being five heads, bought the low or bought this accumulation range, and they're just absolutely ecstatic because it's up so much. But you can see that it's kind of capped out here. It's been in a range, and the fear naturally has to be that there's a distribution, much like Bitcoin experienced, where this would maybe fall out here. You might look at something like this, or you can tighten this up to the bottoms of these and expect this to be your weekly support zone. And everybody's ecstatic when it bursts out. Everybody's ecstatic when it retests and seems to be going up. Not so happy when you fall back into such a zone and your EMA is failing. We're also getting down here close to the midpoint on the RSI, which is generally not a good sign. Cat is very popular, of course. That took me a second. It's actually hard to read katakana English. Sometimes you send me those, and to be honest, I just kind of go, yeah, I'm not gonna read that. I don't care. But considering this our weekly range, or not our range, but our support, it doesn't look very good. My opinion, we are going to look for support, our sort of biggest support here, the bottoms of these previous lows. You put in a slightly higher low if you want to look at bodies, a slightly lower low if you want to look at wicks. That's a pretty tenuous situation to be in, but if you look at the dollar value, it's pretty simple. We're at 105 for our support. Probably people will look for around $1. It's just one of those nice psychological levels. You could look toward that dollar point and kind of mark the bottoms of these wicks, and it would make plenty of sense. The bottoms of these, you have wick here, a close enough, these bottoms, you know, this sort of situation. Wherever you want to mark it, again, it's important to remember that the support resistance zones are not like static. They're more of clouds that you can look at, and it doesn't look very good. The local macro is down. You have to assume that that macro is going to continue unless it shows you otherwise. Right now, there's no reason to believe, off of a lower high and pretty much an equal low. If you were a meme triangle person, you could draw something like this. I'm not so much into triangles, but regardless of how you want to draw it, losing the EMA, losing the top of the range, your bias at this point, it has to be down. So the question is really going to be, how far down do you expect to go? And if you're looking for a target, I think generally you're going to look for these sorts of formations where you had retrace and retest on the way up. So ideally you're not going to go down 80% to this like 15% mark, but it's very possible that you could revisit the 40. You could see 60% cut off of this, and you know, that would still be, I hate to say it, it's kind of meme worthy, but you could see 60% cut off of this and it would still be quite a bull market. What's most likely, I believe, is that you end up getting something that's more of a loose support, something that didn't really confirm, maybe around like the 65, that ends up establishing itself as a new, stronger support. That tends to be what happens after you get something that really just changes its entire history, its entire price action history. It's probably going to find a new level. And, you know, maybe that's wrong, but that would be the first kind of area I would be looking for. I would expect it to be very weak. but it would be something to keep an eye out. I absolutely wouldn't long there. I would want to long down here if we got to that point. As far as longs go, if we do fall out and manage to come back up, I would want to long once we reclaim this. Until then, as far as shorts go, I'd want to see this fail. I wouldn't be playing this area at all. This was an accumulation, and now the price action is kind of deciding what it wants to do. This was a very stable time where you could have accumulated reasonably expecting it to go up, and it did. Now it's going the opposite direction. It's making big moves, and that big move is probably going to be down. So I wouldn't want to short just in case this does somehow hold. But either way, I would short on this breaking, I would long on this breaking and then reclaiming. Otherwise, if you're looking for longs, you're looking for like a new all-time high. We can really get rid of these and just focus on where we are right now. And where we are right now doesn't look great to me. You have, again, when your RSI is mostly in the top half, tends to be mostly bullish. When your RSI starts to drop to the bottom half, like we are right now, you tend to expect downside. Not too complicated with ADA. ADA tends to have clean charts. It tends to have very long accumulation windows that like to break up. So, you know, there's a chance you get something like this, where you have just up and up and up, and then sort of a spill down and a fight back, and then like more down. But I don't really believe in fractals. I don't think that's something to pay too much attention to. Pay attention to the price action you've got. This is what we've got, and what we've got is a local downtrend that's losing EMA and losing RSI. It's revisiting this exact point to show that there is buying interest at around the dollar mark. But if we start hammering that support, all of those limit orders that are sitting at $1, they're going to get chewed through, and we're just going to fall. So I don't want to be on the opposite side of this. This is not something that I would be buying right now. And we can call that a day. VET. Someone wanted me to look at VET. There was Trader XO, I think. Trader XO was the one who posted like a nice short idea for like breaking down and retesting, and how he wanted to kind of short a retest. So we can look at this, and there are a few things that really stand out. You know, you can draw immediate lines on the tops of these sorts of things, and it's not too difficult to see where some supports might be. You can extend those if you really want to be like windows, and see what sorts of ranges you'd be working with if these supports do prove themselves to be something. So you end up with something around these zones. And if you're looking at these zones, the first thing that jumps out to me is, okay, yeah, we retested the bottom of this as a resistance. And then you would be expecting some kind of support from the top of this. Maybe you could draw a line around here, but it would be currently failing anyway. And we've already seen that we are willing to wick completely through where this should be finding support. So this doesn't look promising at all to me. I think that we can clean this up. We can remove some of this like block zone sort of stuff and just draw some very simple lines here. Our resistance, we hit kind of the tops of this, bottom of that sort of business. You had a close enough retest there. These didn't really respect it, which you wouldn't expect it to during a crash. And then the tops, we've got kind of balancing out there. You would expect more from sort of the top of this previous range, but you have to favor recency. Recent price action is more important than old price action. So even though you see kind of the wicks interacting here, what you really got, if you want to look closely at this, you've got kind of a daily support coming in here. And right now we're failing. This is acting sort of as your like resistance zone at the point we are now. You can just turn that red and it's failing. Like there's no way to really sugarcoat that it's failing. We're under the EMA. We kind of hit close to oversold here, and we did get a little spring off of that, as you might expect. And we're hitting close to oversold again, but if this starts to move sideways a little, probably the RSI will continue up, which just gives it room to dump. That tends to be what happens. People see RSI moving up while price action is really bad, and they want to believe there's some kind of divergence when there's not, or they want to believe that it's a sign of bullishness. But in this case, you are just really looking at something that you can't argue. The macro trend on this is down. Like, that's what it is. And right now, our only chance at support would be the top of this range, the 67, call it 68 cents. And if we can hit that and be oversold, then you do have a chance to spring. But in this market with these conditions, with Bitcoin dominance rising, I would not expect that spring to really just immediately break out. I wouldn't want to long it. Maybe, you know, you get something that kind of comes up and tests the resistance or tests the EMA, but I would expect that to fail. We've already wicked all the way through this, and then we hammered that support already. We're hammering that support right now. There can't be that many limit orders. Like 68 cents is not a psychological level that people are going to care about. It's nothing important. So chances are, in my opinion, that we would just go toward something more like this. You can look at the tops of these wicks and sort of the bottom of this range. That might be a more likely candidate, because if you're favoring recency, you can see that this wick came close to this level, and there was buying interest around 61, 60 cents. That makes more sense psychologically, that people would put orders at 60 cents as well instead of 68. More likely that people would just throw an order, a limit order on the book at a round number, then they'll throw a bunch on there at a random interval. So I think if you're looking at this, you're more likely to head down towards 60, bottom out on your RSI there, and then get some kind of bounce. That bounce might only be to 70, but I think that's your more likely bounce point. I don't think we're going to bounce here. And if we did do that, if there's not an immediate reclaim of this level, I would still not be bullish. I think to be bullish, you're probably looking at a bounce around 60. You would need to immediately reclaim this and move to flip that declining EMA, move to keep the RSI rising back to the top half. Right now, I don't think that has too much going for it, and it hasn't for a long time. But if you really want to confirm that sort of thing, we can look at a higher time frame. We can look at the weekly and see what's going on. And what's going on is a lot of red, a lot of very disgusting stuff happening here. Pretty simple, local downtrend. If you're looking for support, you can kind of see the bottom of the previous range. You would probably extend this out. Something like this would have been your weekly support, and that's very obviously failed. The next place that you can look for weekly support would be around here. Previous tops of these kind of hammered into there before taking off. You have a wick that comes down and is a close enough. Right now, this wick is also a close enough that we can call that support, understanding that support is really just kind of a zone. This would be our support zone. So on a higher time frame, looking at the weekly, this is where we would expect VET to really make an attempt to bounce. It's probably not going to do much until, like I said, at earliest 60 cents toward the top of this range. More likely you have some fluctuation, maybe something like this where you get a nice wick to the bottom. There's no sign of immediate reversal. You can look at the RSI. You can see very simply that's not the right thing. You can see very simply if you click on the correct indicator and put your coordinates where they need to be, that we've lost it. So not only on the weekly are we under this EMA in a local downtrend, we lost the RSI, and we have pretty good indicators that show us we're headed toward 60 or sub 60. This is not something I would be looking for a long on, especially the same week that we have actually lost the weekly support. I would not want to immediately look for some kind of reversal just because it wicked to support. I would expect it to continue toward that support. Link. Oh man, the Marines have not done their job, have they, at all? If we go to Link, we look at our weekly on Link. It was probably the best like up only meme there ever was, but pretty simple to throw something at the top of these wicks, and you can see the retests as it goes on. These candles all kind of retest. You have a wick here, and of course the bottoms of these. And now on the weekly, we have lost that. Kind of the same situation as VET. As with VET, you don't want to rush into a long when you've just lost weekly support. As far as looking for some kind of bottom, you might look toward sort of the bottom of these. I think I would favor something more recent and just check the top of this wave here. That's pretty simple to see why. Not only do you capture the top of this move, but the wicks that we've been experiencing on the weekly show that this is more likely to be our immediate support. So we can paint this green and understand that if we go to the daily, we are unlikely to see that it's going to hold up in the face of that weekly being lost. Exactly so. As we go into the weekly and look closer, you can see that the weekly has acted as a daily resistance as well. Similar to the VET chart, if we want to put a daily, it would be something like that, and it's getting destroyed already. Something that's quite different from VET, you can see that the RSI has never actually hit oversold, which is a bit scary because there's been no reason for it to bounce at all. There's been no oversold period. So for us to hit oversold, where would we have to be? Well, you know, if we're looking at something like this, this continuing down, probably about there, you know, probably about there. So maybe for the next week or two, we'll see this head down toward 14, you know, 65-ish. Maybe get a scam wick down to 1450 just because it's a nice number. But this is probably heading down toward the mid 14s. I don't really see any sign that it would want to reverse. It's a pretty steep bear market for this. Like the EMA is just straight down right now. There's nothing since the top that has really, like, you had a really hard attempt at a reversal here when the initial crash happened, but since the initial crash, like straight down, just nothing. Maybe you could look at something like this and say that it tried to come back from there, tried to kind of retake that sort of top level, but complete failure. Weekly acting as resistance, so probably weekly is going to act as support. Not a whole lot to see there, not a lot of hope to have. If I were looking for a long on this, I would look to that weekly. On a daily time frame, even, you know, same thing. You can see that there is buying interest at that weekly. If you want to be precise, you can even throw like right at that wick. It's exactly $15 because people like nice round numbers. So if you were going to throw a long on the book, you know, maybe front run that a little bit, like 15.10 or something, and look for a bounce. But How far is that bounce going to go? Well, you do have a lot of volatility in Link. It might go all the way up to 19 and then fail. It might, you know, it might just hit this daily for mid 16s and fail. But if you're looking for a long, I would want to see like this daily hold up after a bounce. Excuse me. I would want to see this daily kind of retaken. I would not want to see it just come off the weekly and then do nonsense sideways things. If you're looking for a short, I think actually this is probably a decent place to short. Seeing the daily fail, same thing as VET. You could short here if you wanted to, targeting the weekly, but really like your risk versus reward there is not great. Maybe 8% down, but if this turns out to be like some kind of wick and the daily holds, then you know you're looking at 8% down versus like 16% up. So I wouldn't really want to be shorting this. I would want to short another attempt at the weekly that fails. If we somehow bounce from here or even go all the way down and then look like we're failing, I would want to short that. Or on the bottom side, I would want to short if this sort of 15 area gets blasted through, especially on a retest. I would want to short that. That's where your opportunities are going to be. As far as ETH, exactly as we've spoken about the last few days, you see these not so hot price action going on here, where you have a weekly support from this previous wave bottom. You have this wick that was kind of a close enough, and right now we're absolutely destroying the weekly support. Doesn't look great. We've lost the EMA. You can see it there. We're losing the RSI as well. Probably we're going to head into a prolonged bear market. I would expect us to spend plenty of time down here. Once this weekly fails, it's pretty much GG for a long time. If you want a closer look at the daily, you can see this sort of daily zone here failed. This previous support block has been retested and failed. Looking at the weekly support, and like I was saying before, if you have all this hammering into the support, you're either going to rocket off of it, or you're going to eat up all the limit orders there and just dribble through. So either is possible. Of course, we have kind of a parabolic run going, and those are never sustainable on the way up or down. But it's not something that is really attractive. You're close to oversold. You're close to weekly support. If you really are a big dick risk taker, you probably want to long something around here, right? And hope for that bounce either into the daily, even if it acts as resistance, or into the top of the block, even into like a higher time frame support. But I don't expect reversal. I don't think this reverses. That would be a very short-term long. I think you're better off if you want to take a risk. You're gonna just want to short. You would wait for some kind of bounce and rejection, or for this to just break. If you're looking for shorts, you know, a little bit of bounce that gives us maybe some relief on the RSI, comes up to something like this, and then gets rejected, and therefore has more room to move down. That's what I'd be looking for. I'm not really interested in playing leverage on this right now. It looks like shit. It looks bad. I don't know why anyone is bullish. I say that every day. I don't know why anyone is bullish on this. More than maybe like a relief swing. Bitcoin, absolutely terrible. Still continues to be absolutely terrible. Your version to mean can't even make an argument right now. If you wanted to, you know, draw your sort of megaphone, whatever. Talked a little bit yesterday about having these megaphone patterns and how they tend to break down. Obviously, you're not going to just do this with crazy swings forever. Eventually, these broadening wedges, megaphones, whatever you want to call them, they break down most of the time. And right now we see lower lows, lower body close lows, and now we're losing it at the moment. Unless there's some huge pump today, they can turn this into a wick and try to paint some green and maybe, you know, like head back. I was saying before that this level, this 35.5, needs to be flipped by bulls like ASAP and act as a support. Not even this acting as support, like the range low. I don't think that's good enough. Bulls really need the 35.5 if they're going to make some kind of reversal. And when this crash first happened, we talked about there's a possibility of like a double bottom and continuation. There was a possibility of some sort of like high time frame V reversal. There was a possibility of like a Dalai Lama that came out. None of that stuff happened. Of course, those possibilities were based more on how much shit is going to come out of China. If China had just been very quick to say, what we're going to do is just limit leverage, the maximum you can do is 5x leverage, that's the new rule, that's the law, everything's done, go on with your lives, I think probably we would have just had some good news and, you know, reversed at this point. China's taking so long to release any announcements. They're obviously very serious now with cutting power to miners, forcing miners to relocate out of the country. We all know now that it's going to be several months before miners can even attempt to get online. The very rich ones are going to be doing construction, building new facilities. They have to, you know, they have to buy land, they have to build new construction, they have to get power sent to the new construction on different grids that takes different materials. They don't use like aluminum in their construction in the West. Most places they use copper, so, or something like that. So whatever you are hoping for out of China, no matter what, even if now they say, okay, you can trade Bitcoin, but maximum is 5x leverage, it wouldn't matter. Too many people have dumped out because they're afraid that they won't be able to. The banks are being discouraged from working with OTC or anything like that. So probably what we're looking at is prolonged suppression. Like there's not going to be a buyer's market for a long time because China is just gone. So people like me, really, who are more into traditional finance, they don't want to buy and hold this for several months waiting for it to swing. They're probably not even so interested in averaging in now that this range has failed. You know, when you get something like this and you're going sideways, you start to average in, and then if it breaks up, you continue averaging in. But if you have something like this where you're averaging, and then that range completely fails, you expect to form a range somewhere else. So at this point, if you're a big TradFi guy, you're going to have dumped whatever you averaged in, and you're going to look for an opportunity to average in lower. So aside from the small amount of spot that I hold, kind of no matter what, I don't have any Bitcoin. I'm not interested in buying Bitcoin right now. I don't imagine many traditional people are interested in buying Bitcoin at the moment. So we're going to look for some kind of lower accumulation zone where we can either fire off a big fat long or just start averaging in when it looks more like it might reverse. But averaging in on the way down, at this point, with all the news out of China, with this attempted accumulation failing, it's not very attractive at all. So what we're seeing here really on the daily, to talk about technicals, is that this has been revisited as a resistance and been rejected. This sort of bottom trend is it's even worse now. You're breaking down your closing candle bottoms like below, and so we're probably going to see a more sharp decline coming in the works. Probably instead of something like this, we'll be looking more at something like this on the local downtrend. I would expect this to get steeper in the short term, and I would not look to be longing anything at all before the weekly support. This is your most likely area. We've seen buying support here in the past, so probably We'll see some buying support here once we hit it. I think we're going to hit it in short order. And then whatever limit orders are here will probably give us a little relief pump. I don't think it's going to be like the relief pump that sends us to Mars. It's not going to happen that way. If we were to get relief even all the way up to the daily and then come back down and look like we're going to revisit this, I would still be a bear. If we get relief that kind of just like hangs out and then gets a slow growth, I would be pretty bullish about that. If we get a relief that just like rockets up and holds, then of course you're going to be bullish about that. But anywhere below this doesn't look good right now. Anything that continues along this sort of trajectory, of course, doesn't look very good. I don't know where you would want to long other than the weekly support. There's nothing on the daily. We're looking at the daily right now. And really, you've got like this wick, and, you know, sort of the bottoms of these. You could like argue that there's like a little zone here, you know, that you should be thinking maybe even to the bottom of this sort of wick or something here, that this might be your support for the daily. But if you have to start moving the goalposts every time you're thinking about making a trade, it's likely a bad trade. So until this gets some kind of reversal, like real reversal, we haven't had a true reversal, right? All this is sideways and then down. If you want to look at really cutting out all the noise, this is sideways and down. There's no up here. There's no uptrend. There's nothing to long yet. Longs are going to be looking toward the weekly support. Accumulators are going to be looking for some kind of ranging through here. TradFi people like myself are going to have gotten out when this failed and not be looking to buy anytime soon. So I hate to just come in every day when I decided that I would start doing like a voiceover for the charts. I hate that I have to come in and just say bad news on everything. Like it all looks like shit. Nothing looks good every day. Unfortunately, that's the case, but I think it's the time that people need it the most. You know, when you're in a bull market and everything's just going up, you don't really need someone telling you every day, like, don't do it, because you just buy whenever you feel like it and then you make money. So that's not the hard part. The hard part is keeping your emotions under control when this starts to happen, and having someone who can tell you, I don't know, I don't think this is such a great idea, or if you do take a risk, be careful and don't forget to have your stops and all that. That's a better reminder than just someone telling you how much money they make and showing you pictures of watches and whatever on the way up. So we're in a pretty feels bad market. It's probably going to last for quite a while longer. I don't really see this at this point. You know, where's our resist going to end up? Maybe it ends up at the weekly, maybe it ends up lower. But I don't see it really just stopping here with no news, no catalyst, no real sentiment change, no public adoption. Like, there's nothing going on fundamentally that would cause this to change. So all we really have is the price action. Price action is down. I mean, there's no arguing this. I don't really know how people were bullish through here. There were so many people saying like all bears get slaughtered, all, you know, if you're bearish you're stupid, if you're bearish you must like losing money or something, whatever. And you know, now that this has failed the past few days, I'm pretty sure you haven't seen anyone who's like raging bull. I don't think anyone's really holding on to that at this point. So the market's kind of accepting its fate. And you probably see a lot of shorts piling onto the open interests and all that going forward. I wouldn't try to fade that at this point, especially once the 31 fails, which is basically what we're looking at for our daily support. This purple line is basically 31. So once the 31 fails, you got to look just to the 28.4. Something's going to be your earliest, your absolutely earliest support. There's just a huge gap here, and I don't see any reason that you would fade that. I don't think there's any reason to be longing. There's no reason to be buying spot. It looks abysmal, and I'm sorry I have to say that, but it is what it is. We play the hand we've got. So Again, the only feedback I've really gotten so far is, you know, just I can sleep to your voice and post the charts when you're done. So great, I'll do that after this is done here. I'll go ahead and throw the charts on Twitter. I'll clean them up a bit and make sure that there's some little explanation of the short version, what we talked about. Other than that, if you have a request, if there's something you'd like me to look at, it's probably shit. Like, to be real, let's not pretend otherwise. Your coin that you love, your bag that you hold right now, probably best off just selling it and forgetting about it for 3 months. But if you want me to look at it, I will. Send me a message on Twitter or send me a DM if you want. Throw a message in chat, anything is fine. And best of luck to you. Remember to protect yourself in all your trades. And we'll throw it on YouTube here in a second. Alright, that's it for tonight. I'll catch you guys whenever I do this again. Hopefully tomorrow. Try to keep this consistent. Good luck to you. Take care.